Hey everyone, it's Sally Chang of Evergreen Tai Chi Academy. Thanks for joining us. I'm here with my friend and martial arts colleague, Emmy Defigueiredo. We're coming to you from Oakland during COVID-19 quarantine time. It's 2020, people. So it is the year that is different from all the other years. So we're just having a conversation together about our relationship to martial arts, what we're doing this year, how we got here, and all the good stuff. I just wanted to invite you into the conversation and just sit back and enjoy. So, Emmy, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you from here? Are you from Oakland? Are you from elsewhere? And how did you find your way to martial arts?
Yeah. So I am from Oakland, born in Berkeley, Alta Bates baby, but raised in Oakland. So I've lived here almost my whole life. And I came to the martial arts as a young child, 6 years old. So I just turned 36 about a month ago. So it's been 30
a while.
Yeah. But started, as a young person, training with Seagun Kate Hobbs. My mom had a coworker who did jujitsu and really said, your girls should know how to defend themselves and they should learn how to fight. And, you should go put them in something, put them somewhere. At the time, Sifu Kate was teaching out of Hand to Hand, doing the youth program there, and shortly thereafter started Destiny Arts Center. I have continued training with her for the last 20 plus years as she founded Destiny Arts Center and then later on Oakland Kaji Kembo Kun. So that's been, that's sort of how I started. And then in the last decade or so also started training in Doce Pares Eskrima. So training a lot with Sifu Lynn Kessler at Oakland Kaji Kembo, but she was kind of the main, she was the main instructor of Eskrima there, and then have been promoted under her teacher, Grandmaster Reginald Burford. In the last 4 or so years have really also gotten more into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which has been really a fun, new, and different exploration.
Yeah, really fun.
Yeah.
So 30 years, so you've been in it for a while and you grew up doing martial arts. So how did it keep your interest? It's like we grow so much, from, when we're 6 years old to when we're preteens to when we're teens. It's like those are really different times.
Yeah.
So was your interest in martial arts kind of consistent through those years? Did you ever rebel against it? Was it like taking piano lessons, and your parents made you do it and you just showed up and you did it? Or how was that for you when you were a kid?
Yeah, I would say there was some of that. I mean, I think I definitely feel so grateful to my parents for being the kind of parents that were like, you have to stick with this. And you have to, and really martial arts, it was one of the only things we did. I mean, we went, by we, I mean me and my sister. But, we went to class 2 times during the week and 1 time on the weekend. And so I think that there were moments when I'm sure, I don't remember them distinctly, but when I'm sure I was like, I don't want to go or I'm ready to take a break or I want to pull back or things like that. And I really, I mean, I've always loved martial arts, but I think there's been a natural, for many, I would assume most people, ebb and flow of how committed one is, how motivated one is, how connected one feels to their practice and training and their discipline. So I think as a young person, I'm sure that there was definitely cajoling by the parents to keep at it. And, as an adult, I still feel there's still, it's dynamic, the relationship to training. So I love my training and I love my practice. And there have definitely been moments when I feel really connected and really excited and really motivated by what I'm doing. And other times when it is hard, it feels like, an effort to get myself there. So I think that that's definitely there's been a variety of ways throughout the years, but I always have really valued my practice. And so that is part of what's kept me coming back, is that in the end, I always feel good about my training. I think as an emerging adult and as a young, as a teenager, I think there was a lot about martial arts being a space to feel both powerful and beautiful, the side of both sides of that, or both of those experiences. And I think, especially as a young woman, it can be the messages that we get about what beauty is and about what strength is and how to be as a woman in the world.
How did you take that in, like, as a young woman? Like, how did that, those ideas, like, how did that impact you?
I mean, I think having a teacher that was a woman and a martial arts community that was a lot of women in it, was the image, not just the images, but the people and the leaders and the mentors that I had were all, for the most part, women. As a young person, my other primary teacher was Anthony Daniels, so I did have him as well. But the communities that I were in, and I went to PAWMA as a young person, as a probably as like a 10-year-old at one point. I remember when it was like at Mills College one year, and that's right in Oakland, but a few times, not every year since I was a kid, but so there was also that community kind of reinforcing what it meant to be strong and how that could look.
So just for those folks who don't know what PAWMA is, PAWMA is the Pacific Association of Women Martial Artists, right?
Yeah.
And it's been around for 40 years. I think this year's its 40th anniversary, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Do you remember, like, what it was like going to your first PAWMA camp? So, like, every year, PAWMA has a women identified only kind of like 4-day weekend martial arts camp where you get all women instructors. You can choose to take different classes. And the whole community is this safe space for badass martial artists, right? So, I mean, how was that, like, as a kid entering into that? Do you remember?
It just all seems so cool. Like, I remember there were capoeira people and people doing martial arts with a fan as a weapon, and like all these things where I was just like, this is so, it was, you're like in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. You're like, oh my God, like all these amazing bits, just, you're like, wow, there's nunchucks and there's weapons and sashes and just a lot of strength and a lot of power and a lot of excitement and a great variety as well. That, I think, definitely stood out to me before I maybe was able to pull a lot of other things together. Probably a little bit, and I haven't reflected on this a ton, but it was probably, a lot of nerves as a young person. A lot of nerves as a young person, but also a lot of like, finding idols, if you will, people where you're like, oh my gosh, wow, this is, sort of seeing different role models in the community that you could find. And a lot of that for me, I mean, and you asked some about what has kept me in the martial arts, and I think the physicality, just being really so amazed by a lot of the physicality and wanting to be able to be that way and move my body in that way, and was something that I remember as a young person. And also when I think about what's kept me with it, a lot of my experience in the martial arts, I realize, has also really was foundational in developing a love of movement and a love of like being physical and moving my body. And so for me, that's part of why I think I've explored different styles. I think a lot of martial artists, as they spend more time, I'm obviously not alone in this, start to explore different styles. But it's also been why I find that I'm so drawn to just movement in general. Like, there's other practices that I've developed, or, swimming, cycling, things like that, where you just kind of become like a junkie for for moving your body. And so I think that's some of what's also kept me with it, and some of what I saw and wanted to emulate as a young person too.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because I mean, I grew up on the East Coast, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about PAWMA, and I didn't get into martial arts until I was 18, so later than 6 years old for sure. But my first introduction into martial arts was really like kung fu movie theater, like
Mm-hmm.
on the old TVs with the rabbit ear antenna, which you probably don't even remember, but that was super inspiring for us. But it was almost all men. We were really hard pressed to find women martial artists that had a competency or a confidence
Mm-hmm.
in their bodies as martial artists. Even watching like old episodes of like Wonder Woman with Linda Carter, you know, she was just like she's supposed to be badass woman. We have a new Wonder
Mm-hmm.
Woman nowadays that was a lot more convincing as a physical martial
Mm-hmm.
artist. But back then it was just a costume. Like it wasn't just
Right.
the Wonder Woman costume, but it was also like her being a physical heroine was also like a costume. It was
Mm-hmm.
superficial.
Mm-hmm.
PAWMA having these camps that encourage young people and that they can, you know, like you were saying, like you got to see really like competent, beautiful, strong
Mm-hmm.
women martial artists, like face to face. You got to see them. You got to experience their teaching in classes. So it's sort of like you
Mm-hmm.
got to see like a grown-up version of yourself in a way,
Right.
you know, as a more mature, um,
Mm-hmm.
more proficient martial artist. Like you could sort of map your future into that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you know, I came out here in 2001, so it's like for acupuncture school. So I didn't plug into PAWMA until just a few years ago
Mm-hmm.
when I taught there as an instructor. But I mean, my experience, you know, I was just blown away. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, just like being in a community for several days in a row is a residential kind of immersion situation,
Mm-hmm.
and just being surrounded by really powerful, confident women of all kinds, of women of all, you know, ethnicities, ages. The year I went, there was also a lot of young people that came, and since PAWMA's been around for a long time, there were also some more senior members of the PAWMA community, you know, who are
Mm-hmm.
really respected and even revered, able to, you know, demonstrate and teach and have their presence there. So it's like this multi-generational
Yeah.
women martial artists, and seeing like the influence over the generations. Like I feel like I was never I felt like I was never like even seen as a women martial artist in the way that I was there in that community, as
Mm-hmm.
I was even in my all of my other martial arts communities,
Mm-hmm.
in the other different styles. All of my primary teachers have been men.
Mm-hmm.
They've been wonderful men. Uh, they still are. But I mean, it's just really different. It's just a really
Yeah.
different feeling to be surrounded by
Yeah.
women martial artists.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel it's interesting that you say that, because I feel so fortunate that my experience has mostly been of women role models in my martial arts community, in my sort of directly in my school, in my, and then also in kind of this greater kind of community of martial artists. And
So
yeah.
Oakland Pledge has been co-ed the whole time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's women led. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So founded by Sifu Kate Hobbs, our chief instructor is Chief Instructor Lynn Kessler. And then my sister Mariko has recently taken over
Mm.
the program. So
And do you
yeah,
have all ages there at Oakland College?
we do have all ages. We have a lot. So we say like 3 up to like your grandma or your
Oh,
grandpa.
wow.
But yeah,
That's
so
pretty
there's
old.
a Little Tigers program that is like 3 to 6, I think, or 3 to 5. I can't remember. But the wee ones, there's a couple classes for grammar and middle school aged kids, and then there's high school and adult programming together. So yeah, we cross the whole the whole age range.
Yeah, I mean that's really cool. I have only taught adults. I like teaching kids, but my experience is pretty is much less. Being in more of the internal arts world, kids often don't have the patience to go slow.
Yeah, yeah,
They need
yeah,
something more vigorous to just to
yeah.
get that energy moving. But you also get adults coming in to your school for the first time, right? Like not
We
everybody comes
do.
in as a
Yeah,
kid.
not everyone comes up through it as a kid. And we get adults coming for the first time. And we have right now also a lot of adults that came like as parents. So they put their kids in the program and were just so drawn to what we were doing and felt really like saw their kids training and wanted to be more involved in the community and wanted to train themselves. And so to came to their training through that lens, and then obviously developed their whole own relationship on their own, independent of what their child is doing.
And for women who are, most women are raised to be subdued, or to reduce their own power, or be deferential in their power, or to not claim their own power. How does one develop that power, claim it for themselves, and then like do you see that transformation happen? Like especially I think with adult, fully formed women who are coming to martial arts. Do you see kind of like a transformation in people?
Definitely. Definitely. I think you see a transformation, and I think you also, I mean, we ask at belt promotions too for people to speak about, they get asked specific questions, so the questions vary from test to test, from rank to rank. But there are a lot of women that talk about the transformation that they've had as they've trained more in the martial art.
What's like the
And
most memorable one that you?
so one that sticks out in my mind was a test where we had a few moms testing. They just all talked about it was like just like badass mamas. It was like, coming into it because they put their kids in the program, and then being like, oh wait, I think I want to do this too. And some of it being like, I think I want to do this too, and maybe this is also a way that I can be with my kid too, right? Like it's sort of a win-win. Like I'll train some, I'll be in this community, my kid's doing it, like and then obviously developing their own practice, own relationship with the martial art, with the community, with their training partners, and then testing and just like the strength that was there in that transformation. And I think for them, it was also like, I think it was like 3 or 4 moms. I mean, there were other people too. It was a bigger test for us, but that there was just like, there was some fire in that of like, they're coming into their own power there. So that's one that stands out to me.
Yeah. So this year, 2020, global pandemic.
Yes.
So I imagine you've been instructing online.
Yes.
I've also been
Yes.
instructing online, and that's its own thing.
It is.
Being in a small space and interacting with people in 2 dimensions rather than 3. I'm sure you had to kind of like quickly adjust, right? At some point early on in the quarantine, when all of a sudden you had like all these regular classes almost every day of the week, and then boom, like all of them are gone, and then having to adjust to teaching online.
Yeah.
But actually, just like as a practitioner, like with your own practice, like how has quarantine practice been for you?
Yeah. So that was hard to let go of a lot of that in-person stuff, just because it had been filling up like a greater portion of my time than it probably ever had been. Yeah. So that was hard. I really am a structured person, so I really enjoy structure and I enjoy routine. So I tried to create some of my own like sessions for myself, kind of.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, our chief instructor, Lynn, really led the way in crafting like a program for the school, like just sort of a structure for how we were going to make all this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously with support and inputs from the rest of folks in the community. But so we kind of put that into play. But I think I've been really grateful to have a practice.
Mm-hmm.
To have a discipline and something that I feel like I can go to. And for us, that's martial arts, but I think that could be a lot of different things for people. But it felt really important to have something like a community that I could plug into and something that I just knew how to do. Like I knew how to train myself, or to say, okay, let me at least just go outside and run through my forms one time, or something that kind of is like a landing spot, right? Like where can there's all this craziness and uncertainty happening. And like, what's something that I don't have to learn how to do this. Not that I didn't learn new things, but like, this is something that I kind of know how to do, a place that I know how to go, a place where I know to go. So that I was really grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
It also really, go ahead.
I think just having that, sorry to interrupt,
No.
just having that experience, like long-term experience in practice, like it's just like part of your makeup, right? It's like you learned how to have a discipline. You learned how to practice even if you didn't want to. You would just show up for classes, whether you were in a good or a bad mood.
Yeah.
You would just show up. And something that really helps me, like when because I can fully admit that, when all of my schedule and structures just like got completely discombobulated, it was hard to keep up my own practice in a way. I mean, for me, I was teaching a lot more actually in the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody was kind of like wanting to give stuff out for free. I was like I was just like doing free live Qigong classes every week and still wanting to support my community and things like that. So actually I was teaching even more. But so I would practice, but I think my personal practice got a little unbalanced there. But like you were saying, just having that like well-worn path.
Right. Yeah.
Where you're just like, okay, I know like pretty much 100% of the time, I'm going to feel better after practice than if I don't practice.
Yeah.
For me, that's always really helpful. Like if I just need a break, or if I'm feeling down one day because of like all the volatility in the world, dealing with the shock of the pandemic, dealing with the shock of George Floyd's murder, there's really hugely big things happening in the world right now. So sometimes it can take a minute to just kind of let that land in us, not just mentally, like with the news, but emotionally, physically, like it has this like impact on our being. So I think it's really important to take the time to process that, to metabolize that. And also I found that like, even if I don't know like what form I feel like doing, I know that if I do something, even the simplest thing, the first thing that I know, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, I know that I'm going to have a benefit from that at the end. It's like guaranteed. Because I've just listened to, some students, people have been down, depressed, and despairing or distracted or not sleeping well, just tired and kind of like overstimulated, and have a hard time finding their way back to practice. And I do too. Like, I'll fully admit that I do too. Let's be real.
Yeah.
I've always admired, I've had some really good practice partners, and I always admire the ones that are very disciplined with their daily practice. But I'm not always that way. I'm just I like structure, but my structure can have a diversity of rhythm to it. And so because that's the way that I learn, I can be very accepting of that I don't have to be dogmatic about my practice. On the other hand, it really helps to have a structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The second part of what I was going to say was that it's been illuminating also how hard it is to train without some of the external structures of this, classes Mondays and Wednesdays at 5:30. So you just need to get yourself there, right? Even if that was over Zoom, even if that transitioned to being over Zoom. But the practice of doing it on my own, and how does that look, and what do I focus on, and what does it mean, has definitely been, in some ways, initially I knew, okay, like just do something. But then as things kind of settled in, it's finding that rhythm, as you said, has been more challenging for what that personal practice looks like. One of the things that Lynn shared with our community that I found so helpful and valuable was that if you give yourself permission to say, self-training can happen in whatever clothes I'm wearing, whatever clothes I want, whatever, the uniform, the clothing doesn't matter, the time doesn't matter, and the location doesn't matter, then it's like I found it to be very freeing to be like, yes, I can do kung fu in my kitchen while I wait for such and such, or I can put my whole uniform on and go outside and, spend an hour doing something, but I can also do something that looks really different. And all of that can classify as kind of self-training and is beneficial to my practice.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the structure and the uniform and showing up can be super motivating for people, including myself. But also, I think what's incredibly empowering is that your practice is everywhere. Like uniform isn't required. Even form, right? Even your martial arts forms aren't required to practice. You can still practice your martial arts while you're waiting for the pasta water to cook, to boil, right? Or while you're pouring your tea. It's like all of those things, doing the laundry, sweeping the stoop. It's like all of your practice can get in a very kind of intimately mundane way. And you can take the formality out of it and just like bring it in more inside. Like you can own it more if you're like, oh, this thing that I learned how to do in class, I can weed the garden and not like hurt my neck or hurt my back. It's just like simple things can actually be really empowering. And I find are really good modes of practice. But just letting go of the formality and just like, oh yeah, I can practice everywhere. Nobody's watching. I don't have to brush my teeth. I can practice my jammies. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Very liberating. What's given me a lot of hope is the way that I've seen folks reach out and connect to each other. People are in need of a lot of things right now. So how do we open up what we have, what I have, what you have, what we have as much as possible to give it and share it and exchange it with others, because we're all sitting at different spots in any given moment, right? There's so much ambiguity right now. So what someone needs at any given moment, I might have something that can help them with that. So how do we make as many of those resources available to as many people as possible? So I've seen that in the training community in that way, like, people, there were people leaving like sourdough starters, like on like telephone poles throughout my neighborhood.
Really?
Like things like that are, for me, it's all the same thread, which is, these are weird and different times that most of us have not been in before. So how do we share what we have in our resources as much as possible? Like help lift each other up, like grab people and hold on to them and stay connected.
Spirit of generosity, right?
Yeah.
What we're saying is just like, there's so many ways that we can help each other, and you don't have to have a belt to help each other.
Right.
There's been lots of stories of bread making.
Yes.
Lots of baking,
Lots of bread
lots
making.
of bread making, lots of baking, lots of
Yeah.
cookies being shared along with
Yes.
neighbors.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
that
that.
spirit of generosity, you know, sometimes in the martial arts community, I'd have to say that just like any community, right, is going to be a microcosm of the larger society.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, I think that, you know, at least in my experience in the martial arts community, sometimes there's a secretiveness, right? Sort of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, my teacher's got the secrets and
Yeah.
my teacher don't have it, you know, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. You know, my
Yeah.
lineage is better than your lineage, and you know, just
Yeah.
there's always that kind of conversation. And I found just like with huge calamities, people can really be generous and come together
Mm-hmm.
and like, oh, this sort of art form that I find is really helpful in this time. It doesn't just belong to me or my club, actually,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be a benefit to a much wider audience. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's like can be a much more generous attitude in
Mm-hmm.
providing and sharing things that could be helpful in a moment of
Mm-hmm.
desperation for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it can bring out the best in people and also in communities.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's hard times, it's hard topics, you know, people it's existential for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Just to turn the topic a little bit to race and heritage, you know, it's just
Mm-hmm.
like because that's the other pandemic that's been,
Yeah.
you know, underlying everything for forever,
Yeah.
right? It's not like racism was just invented. It's been going on since humans have been living together, right? So it's not like it's gonna disappear on Monday. But
Mm-hmm.
how do we like manage or maintain our nervous system so that we're not exploding all the time because we're
Mm-hmm.
constantly enraged? I mean, like me personally, being Asian American, my personal experience of being racialized, you know, all my life in covert and overt ways,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like there's a lot of PTSD that's coming up for me, you know, during
Mm-hmm.
this time, you know, and I know that's true for a lot of people of color.
Yeah.
Race is a social construct.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reduction. It's like this group of
Mm-hmm.
people who have these qualities, whoever is the main centralized position of power, that group is deciding like what race categories are. It's really different than cultural heritage or
Mm-hmm.
your ethnicity, which is the opposite, right? It's like that's like your place of wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
It's multi-layered, it's multi-dimensional, it's multi-generational. My parents were immigrants from
Mm-hmm.
Taiwan. I was born here, so fully Americanized, but also just being second generation, sort of like not being fully accepted in one culture or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way I look, I'm never going to be a white American, right? Never going to
Mm-hmm.
pass, right? This face is never going to pass as white, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
never going to speak Chinese fluently. I'm never going to know that culture fluently. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm like in that in between world. You know, that's the
Mm-hmm.
place I reside. Is kind of like this bridge or ambassador that is not fully in one place or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering, like, you know, does your cultural heritage, like, how does that influence you in your life?
Yeah. Yeah, so I identify as biracial. My mom is Japanese and my dad is white. And so I think growing up, I definitely felt that sort of tug, if you will, of not belonging fully
Mm,
to one group or the other, not feeling, yeah, not feeling like I belonged fully. And also trying to figure out what it meant, what it meant to me. Like,
yeah.
did I see myself as Asian? I knew that I didn't see myself as just white, but I knew that I am white, part white. Uh, but I think that kind of in between definitely as a young person struggled to figure out how do I get comfortable? Like, where do I find comfort? And I think I've always felt and maybe just got more comfortable with the feeling of where I really feel the most, what I identify most with is being mixed, and other people that are mixed, and I can only speak from my perspective, but as I connected with more people that also identified as mixed, that was the group where I could see and felt a lot of shared understanding and shared experiences. That identity of being mixed was the one where felt like it made the most sense to me in a certain way.
Yeah.
My mom's family is from Hawaii, and so there a lot of people are mixed, hapa, half something, half something, and half something else. Mostly Asian, right? A lot of Asian immigrants and some white people.
So is
but that's
hapa,
mostly what the mixes are.
is hapa considered a term it's neutral to use?
You mean like it doesn't mean something negative?
Yeah, it's not derogatory or anything like that.
Yeah, no, it's not derogatory.
Yeah,
or I've not known it to be derogatory, and I don't feel, but
well, I think a lot of people maybe on the mainland don't really know that term. So I wanted to clarify what that is.
Yeah, it means half. And so it sort of colloquially means you're half Asian and typically half, people would say like hapa haole. Haole means white in Hawaii. So if you say you're hapa, usually it means like you're half Asian and half white, or often. So at least that's how it was used when I was growing up.
When you went to Hawaii, that was like a really common term.
Yeah.
And, you could actually like see your people around you.
Yeah.
You could see like plenty of people that look like you around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think and I've, visiting family there for my whole life, but I think the identity politics, as my awareness of them became greater, as I was developing and just understanding who I am, my connection to that experience also became a little bit clearer for me. Obviously, like Hawaii is where my family's from. And so feeling a really big connection there, and also being aware that it's a place where like it felt like, I sort of blended in a certain way that I didn't necessarily hear. Not that I felt like I've ever like stood out. But as a mixed person, getting really commonly asked, especially as a young person, like, what are you?
That question.
Like being all the time. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. It's not just mixed people. I'm just, again, speaking from my experience, getting that question so much as someone that's sort of like racially ambiguous, and people really wanting to know because they want to be able to figure it out. Yeah, it's interesting. In Hawaii, I don't think anyone would ever ask, but here, people would ask all the time, and most of the time get it wrong. and so I think that was also some of it. Like that was an experience I was having as well.
Yeah, that question, what are you?
Yeah.
I fucking hate that question.
Yeah.
It's so offensive, right? Because it's so dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like the asker of that question is almost always white, somebody who feels like they're in the center of society, and that however they identify is like the norm, like the position of authority in a society.
Yeah.
And everybody else and that looks different is the other. So it's like, what are you? It's just like, it's this immediate sort of categorization or objectification.
Yeah.
It's just like, I want to put you into this box in my mind.
Right.
Or I want to figure you out. Like that's going to figure you out. Or, that's going to help me figure out what you can do for me.
Right.
So instead of like being interested in you as a person, first of all, you as an individual human being, first of all, and then asking about like, what's important to you? What's your family like? What's your heritage? What's just asking really, human-based
Mm-hmm.
questions, of curiosity and an interest in learning, rather than like, I'm going to reduce you to this thing.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think a lot of it is around like what sort of the reductionism of it, because I think race matters. It might be a social construct, but it also impacts how most of us move through the world. And, as a person of color, I speak for myself, like how I move through the world, how I'm viewed. So even though it's a social construct, it's real and lived in many ways. And so I'm not advocating for color blindness in that regard, but there's a lot more nuance and thoughtfulness, I think.
I totally agree. I think that the whole color blindness way of operating diversity training and understanding that came out of that was a kind of erasure of color,
right.
Which is first of all, it's impossible for us as human beings to not bring those associations to an interaction.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's not true, right? Like you were saying, race does matter. I think gender and race are the things that we go to first when we're encountering another human being. We want to identify. So those things are really important, and I think part of growing up into this moment or this generation's what's being called to attention right now is not a color blindness, not an erasure of ethnicity, but actually just like a fuller understanding. And for me, I think is like the willingness to learn, like to step out of complacency. Like we can get so focused on production and wealth making and surviving, making the rent, paying off debts, that we really lose sight, or we think that we don't have time. We don't parcel out our time. We want to categorize it and then shelve it. And I think right now what's being demanded is just like, it's not just diversity and inclusion. It's sort of like, even those words are really problematic. It's like, what are you diverting from? What are you, inclusion implies exclusion, right? Towards a system that is centered around white bodies. So it's like, when we're talking about like dismantling racism, it's like there's so much internal work that needs to be addressed. I'm not an expert. I'm totally not an expert. There's so many fantastic educators coming up right now, being put into the spotlight, being given the mic, that we all really need to learn from and develop a kind of resilience. And I think being martial artists, developing resilience is a huge part of what we do.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can apply these practices or disciplines, or even just like the willingness to have a focus, to have a consistent focus on a something, maybe it doesn't have to be all day long. You can still make your sourdough bread, but listen to a podcast too. Just sort of like, this is like an ongoing practice that actually changes lives. And I feel like if we can address these things on like a ground level, individual place, that is like that is truly grassroots, right? That is what changes culture intergenerationally. It's the detailed internal work of like, we were all born into this system of white-bodied supremacy. It's like, we didn't invent it, we inherited it. So we're all a part of, we've all been trained to uphold it, to prop it up in whatever ways. And different people, especially different race groups and different genders, prop it up in different ways. To really just to be in a process of being anti-racist or dismantling racism, I feel like is just like pulling those those threads apart, kind of like being able to recognize it within and then being able to make an adult choice to act differently or regard something differently.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I often think about the sort of the personal, interpersonal reflection, education work, and how something like this requires, like something like dismantling racism. It's necessary, I think, for that, and also to have work happening on all these different levels, right? So there's policy work, and there's interpersonal, and there's personal, and there's community, and but I do think that it's, for me, I've thought, like, what is my role to play, and what is the work that I need to do as a person of color? What is my role in dismantling anti-Black racism? Because I feel like, are needing to invest energy and attention right now. And what are the lessons that we learn there, and the work there, and then how do we also take those and look at other systems of oppression and racism, and attack something else as well. But I think, what is my role, and how do I feel? What does authentic activism look like for me now? Because it's different than it looked 15 years ago. And how do I find a way to contribute and be active and do the work that I think will create some kind of a change, and also be authentic to where I'm at now.
And do you feel like martial arts has any relevancy in this conversation about race and racism?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I've been thinking about that some. I mean, I think about martial arts in the context of how to fight back against race and racism, and especially in light of all the kind of national demonstrations and protests that are happening. And so there's a really sort of tactical in terms of like protecting yourself, or boundary setting, or like physical safety, mental health and awareness, like that kind of a thing. But I also think that martial arts is not, and the communities that we're in, is not separated, is not in a vacuum. It's not outside of the ways that we see, experience, and for some people replicate racism and like racist structures that exist in society at large. And so I think there's work to be done there around, everything from the individual to the community, leadership roles that we play. So I think there's some of that. And I also think for martial arts, a lot of us are coming to arts, or maybe coming to arts that are not necessarily of our own heritage. And so what is the line, or what is the balance, or how do we make sure that we are intaking and practicing in a way that feels authentic and respectful, and not co-opting or voyeuristic. And so I think those are all questions to be looked at and asked. And I think for me personally, I sometimes think, like, what is my role as an instructor at my martial arts school, and in our direct martial arts community, in the community that we're in? So like literally the physical neighborhood space that our school is in.
And just circling back to PAWMA, it's the Pacific Association of Women Martial Artists. Is race relevant or play a part in PAWMA moving forward? And like you said, I think that race is involved in every sector. Like there's no, like, just walk down the street and race plays a role. So it's not like there's a single sector or profession or anything in life where race and equity don't matter. It matters in every situation. So if you're training for combat or self-defense,
Mm-hmm.
and that's your primary training, and I think it's also important to note that almost all police officers are martial artists as well, right? They're trained
Mm-hmm.
martially, right? Soldiers are trained
Mm-hmm.
to have a physical basic level, at least physical combat. So like when you're in the martial arts, like how do you not just see all the world as a battlefield? Like how are you not just like in the world, like ready to
Mm-hmm.
have a fight or start a fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how
Yeah.
do you balance that as a martial artist?
Yeah. Uh, Such a good question. I mean, so in a real practical terms, our school has a warriors code. So Kate, who
What's that?
founded our school, wrote the warriors code, which has 6 lines. That's kind of like a guide to how to move through the world as a warrior, right? So the first line is a warrior skilled in body and kind in heart. The first line is called love. A warrior skilled in body and kind in heart.
Hmm.
Respect. A warrior respects oneself and all living things. Care. A warrior believes that caring for oneself means caring for our world. Responsibility. A warrior takes responsibility for one's own actions and makes a superior effort in every situation. Honor. A warrior uses fighting skills honorably only to protect self and loved ones. A warrior never raises a fist in anger. And then peace. A true warrior lives by this code and firmly believes that the greatest warrior of all is the one that stands for peace.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Will you do it?
Yeah.
Can you say them another time?
It's so funny. I've known these since I learned them when I was a kid, and they're still, you have to, everyone, so you have to learn them. You have to say them at your belt test. So,
I mean, it's just so beautifully,
yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear it again.
Yeah. Okay. So love, a warrior is skilled in body and kind in heart. Respect, a warrior respects oneself and all living things. Care, a warrior believes that caring for oneself means caring for our world. Responsibility, a warrior takes responsibility for one's own actions and makes a superior effort in every situation.
Hmm.
Honor, a warrior uses fighting skills honorably only to protect self and loved ones. A warrior never raises a fist in anger. And then peace. A true warrior lives by this code and firmly believes that the greatest warrior of all is the one that stands for peace.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's just it's so it's soulful.
It is. Yeah. It's so I think that has, guided, that helps inform so much of what does it mean to be a warrior in this world, and how do you take the physical skills that you're honing in your body, and all the things that you're learning, and not abuse that,
Yeah. Yeah, how do you
So
develop power and not abuse that power?
mhm. I think the last thing I'll say about the container in the school, I think too, and the role of one of the roles of the instructor, I think, is also acknowledging that that it is an experience that is not just physical, and so that we are we're bringing our lived experiences. Some of that might include trauma for some people. We're bringing what just happened in this day and this moment before we stepped on the floor, and so there's like a vulnerability that that is natural, and like an emotional component that is inevitable. And even in just saying that, I think it opens the door for people to then, if they're having a response that feels emotional, or what, if it's bringing something up for people, that it's like, right, we've all acknowledged that this is part of the practice.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. Yeah, vulnerability and trust are crucial. Yeah. I think from the outside, if you're not a martial artist, you can have the view that it's all about external expression of aggression,
right.
and winning. There's certainly a lot of competitive sports that are like this, so that's totally valid. But in terms of martial arts, just being about dominating in competition, maybe it's about that, but in the practice gym, in your practice community, So much about it is trust.
Yeah.
And there's something about like being in like a physical alive situation that is changing moment to moment to moment to moment. It's not preordained, you know, like say with sparring, live sparring. You know, it's just like nothing is preordained. So it's just like you're just responding in the moment.
Right.
And there's so much vulnerability there, because if your mind's wandering off somewhere, and your body's doing something else, that could be a potentially dangerous situation for yourself. You know, development of trust with your training partner, you know, like having a good training partner, oh, it's like so valuable, right?
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
like in martial arts and kung fu anyway, you call your, you know, it's just like your kung fu brothers and sisters. It's like your family, your you know, your sister from another mister. It's like it's like that trust and camaraderie, that even if you're in a sparring situation, that you're still facilitating the best for your partner, and your partner is doing that for yourself.
Right.
Yeah. And so that level, like bonding, I feel like, you know, bonding and developing friendships like over time through these situations, like practicing together, the camaraderie is really strong.
Yeah, it's true. That's why we always say we have to also break bread together. Like that's why we train together, but we also share birthdays and meals and parties and, you know, all these other things, because it is building that bond of camaraderie that's on the training floor, but also off the training floor.
It's life. You know, you see the whole life. Yeah. Well, we've had a super conversation. I don't want to keep you. Maybe we can just kind of close with talking about PAWMA's events for September. So traditionally, just in-person camp. A long weekend, and of course it's 2020, so that's not happening.
That's not happening.
So what is happening?
So we're really excited. We're doing our first ever camp online this year. So it will kick off Friday, September 11th, 2020, and goes through Sunday, September 13th. We will kick off camp with opening ceremonies on Friday evening, and then we will have classes taught throughout Saturday and Sunday by an amazing group of talented instructors. You are one of them. It's a great opportunity. Typically, you know, camp, we come together, we share space, we share meals, we train, we sweat, we laugh, and we're hoping to bring as much of that into our online camp as possible. It'll be a little bit different, but still training hard together. We will have a demo on Saturday night along with some social hour time, so the opportunity to connect as well, just as a community and as siblings, martial arts siblings, as we like to say. Also this year, we are going to be including a couple more sessions on race, anti-racism, and equity. So we'll be having a luncheon, which we typically do have every year. We've had this in the past as kind of like a people of color and then a white allies lunch. Last year was actually the first year I think that we had the white allies component, but continuing to give again a space for people to dialogue a little bit about their personal experiences and connect with other folks at camp. So that will be on Sunday. And then on Saturday, we're having another session, but we're interested to engage the community around the work of anti-racism. And PAWMA has definitely done work there, and I feel really grateful for the work that those that have come before me and before this board have put in. And we are hoping to just continue addressing equity, and ending racism, you know, inside of our own community, and sort of being an anti-racist organization. Once you register, you'll get all that information. We're still finalizing the schedule, but as we finalize it
for the whole weekend, and then jump into whichever class you're interested in.
Exactly. And this year we're doing a little bit something different for registration as well. So registration this year will be on a sliding scale, starting all the way from $0 up to $500, or if you wanted to donate more to come to camp, you are welcome to do that. But the idea being that we understand that people are, this pandemic has really impacted people's financial situations in a lot of different ways. And so we
Yeah.
want to make camp as accessible to as many people as possible. And so join in.
Who can join? Who can register?
So you don't have to be a member of PAWMA to register. We welcome all women and girls, including individuals who are transgender, non-binary, or self-identify as female. So if that's you, you are welcome to come train with us at camp, all skill levels. In terms of age, I think we're 13 and above.
Yeah.
So we do encourage young people to come, but I think it's 13 and above.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's September 11th through the 13th, right?
September 11th through the 13th. Yes.
And then how do people register? Is there a website or something?
Yeah. So PAWMA.org, PAWMA.org. If you go on there, you can look under camp events and get a little bit more information about camp. And there's then a button for you to register and takes you through that process.
Yeah. I just want to encourage everybody to become a member if you can. Supporting PAWMA, it supports the community of martial artists, especially for women martial artists. And it's really crucial in this time. There's a lot of need for community and a lot of need for support. So whatever you can do to pay it forward, it really has a huge benefit to the entire community and all these women and girls that need martial arts in their lives to help them feel healthy and strong and to exercise their body and voices in ways that are empowered. PAWMA is an organization with a lot of integrity. All the staff are volunteer. The non-for-profit organization is really focused on service.
And if I can make one more plug for that too, if you're seeing this and you're not sure, this is actually a great opportunity. It'll be different than our in-person camp, which is kind of our typical annual experience. But it'll be the same in the sense that it'll give you a flavor for the community of PAWMA, the amazing instructors that we bring to camp every year, and the community of peers that you'll get. And because registration has so many options from a cost perspective, you can register for as little as you want and come to as many or as few classes as you want. So the commitment is very low. So if you're not sure, you can totally just dip your toe in a little bit and see what you think. This is a great year to try that and see if you'd like to.
Probably learn a lot and have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much, Emmy. It's really great conversation. Really appreciate all of your thoughts and experiences.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great to talk.
All right. We'll keep in touch. See you all soon.